And we are live. It is April 20th, 2020. It's 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Boris Johnson fears a second peak from relaxing the lockdown, says the BBC. He resists easing the lockdown, says Bloomberg. He urges caution on easing the lockdown, says the Financial Times. So big dispute among the British papers about whether he is fearing, resisting, or just urging caution about a second wave if he eases the lockdown. We don't have any fun anymore, though we're having a hell of a lot more of it than Boris Johnson is. And in lieu of fun, it is Pugilism Week. So, Kate, tell us about our first total knockdown octagon match on Pugilism Week.
Okay, this is gonna be a lot of fun. Also, I want to just explain to Scott and Orin that every episode we've developed naturally, that we open every episode. We measure time in Boris Johnson's here on In Lieu of Fun show. He was, I think it kind of happened just because like right before we went to show, he had gone into the hospital. And so that was like, and then he was in the ICU. And so then it just kind of got to be that was like the breaking news. And so now we've just kind of kept it up. So like whatever, like, be like, Boris Johnson is pooped. Like there's your news for the day. So basically, I'll just leave that up. But we're in Pugilism Week, which is the theme we picked randomly on Saturday, not with Ben picked randomly on Saturday, not even knowing that I was going to have a workout planned on Sunday for the mystery guest with my personal trainer, who was a kickboxing champion. And so we had a ton of fun, and this whole week is lined up to basically be a series of debates that are somewhat fun and serious and somewhat ridiculous and fun. Fun is the main thing. And I had proposed to you guys to both come on.
Because you famously hate each other.
Because you famously hate each other. Scott Shapiro has slandered. Oh wow, Orin, your name is Scott Shapiro on my Zoom feed. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Did you do that, Orin?
I did. It's part of my mind control strategy.
All right, I'm just gonna not interfere with that then, because like
Scott seems utterly like shocked.
Now everything you say can be attributed to Scott. You should emphasize that it's all on the record.
Yeah.
I'm really I'm really concentrating hard in order to pick a fight.
Okay, we're great. This is great. We have great intros planned for you. They're hilarious. I think I laughed really hard making it, which is all that matters. And we asked you two on. This is actually kind of perfect because we had invited Scott on to be on the show, and then also Orin, you are on separately. And Scott, I introduced you by reading off the slander that Orin had leveled at you that you have republished in your Twitter bio. And so I don't really know.
Wait a minute, it's only slander if it's not true.
Yeah, that's
true. Why is Scott bad for Yale and bad for the law?
No, bad for America.
Bad for America, sorry.
Yeah. I was going to be
for the law.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. I could be bad for Yale Law School, but be excellent for the law.
Yeah, that is very, very separate things. Let's be clear.
Yeah. Exactly.
What's the origin of the grudge match that ended up in Scott's bio? Why do you guys hate each other so much?
Well, first of all, let me just say I have never met Orin.
All the better. It's harder to hate somebody once you know.
When did we meet?
We met when I interviewed at Cardozo in.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
It was only 20 years ago, and I've been waiting for this moment for 20 years.
You've been a law professor since 2000?
Fall 2001.
Jeez, you're old.
Yeah.
No, I just like it was more like I
I-
can't believe that like I can't you like you I actually thought you were younger than that. So there you go.
I was a law professor. I've been a law professor since 1996.
Wow. I was in 6th grade, Scott.
But no, we have never really met. Since I think it's fair that an interview during appointments is not a true meeting. It is a pretend fake meeting in many ways. But it is a pleasure to meet you outside of that setting. I do love your Twitter feed is hilarious.
Likewise. So the origin for the people out there was that I was envious of all the people who in their Twitter bios had been slandered by important people, and I had nothing to say for myself. And so I crowdsourced insults, and Orin, as usual, came up with the nastiest thing to say. And so I put it up there, and since then I've gotten like much nastier things, but I'm very wedded.
We have somebody in the audience today who is, I think, the world champion of important people saying nasty things about. So you know who you are out there, and just raise your hand or shoot me a note if you want to talk about having famous people say nasty things about you. Oh, you do? Okay, let's bring you in. So I think you're all gonna. So Lisa Page is like a good friend.
Wow! Oh my God! I'm getting off this call. I'm getting off this because I cannot compete.
Whoa. Like, you guys have, like, you can dredge up Orin too. But Lisa, what's the worst thing the president has said about you in a tweet?
Oh God.
Or in a speech?
That's really, I mean, I think accusing me of treason really ranks up there because it's, one of the few enumerated crimes in the Constitution and punishable by death. So that's high up there, but
Is it in your Twitter bio though?
no, I'm not always lovely in my Twitter bio. So I try to be a little more subtle about the perpetual
What's worse, when the president says that you are a coup plotter and plotted treason, or when he persistently calls you lovely?
I mean, the latter is definitely creepier. I don't know what to make of it. And it only appeared after my congressional testimony, so that's even more peculiar. But he's really come away from that now. I'm definitely not lovely, regardless of the definition anymore.
May I ask how it felt? I mean, I imagine the first couple of times it was been really scary. Did you ever get used to it, or?
No, not really.
Did it like rain down other like his followers on you too?
Oh.
Is that like why it was the most like? I mean, because I wouldn't really care if he said something about me, even though he's the president, if nothing happened. But like, I would imagine it's mostly because he has all these, like, he's got these, it's, it's like, who will rid me of this troublesome priest?
Right. No, it's, my Twitter timeline is something truly awful. Like, that doesn't matter. I can post a picture of the Capitol and say like, oh, the city's kind of pretty. And there will be 2, 3, 4, 5 dozen, slut, home wrecker, vulgarities beyond probably the purview of this show. Yeah, it's awful. I mean, I think I said to Ben, like, I retweeted Gabriel's project because it's fabulous and so amazing. And I got back, he's too young for you, Lisa. Like, it's just nasty.
I mean, he is, but also.
Well, as it turns out, it hadn't entered my mind in the first place. But yeah, I don't know. Do you get used to it? It's a sort of a hard question. I mean, do you ever get used to being sort of even like yesterday, he went on his, human scum tirade at the FBI. He didn't name me by person, but I'm undoubtedly included. And it is a signal to the rest of his followers. It's a reminder right, that we're all still out there, notwithstanding the fact that we've all been out of government for, 2 or more years.
So Lisa, we got to get to.
Yeah, please. I did not mean to take this over at all.
We got to get to the slugfest between Orin and Scott.
Please, that's what I showed up for.
But come back tomorrow and we can do Ask Me Anything with Lisa. There's lots of good people out here. We've gotten Kate Levesque.
I don't know that Lisa wants an Ask Me Anything.
Lisa does.
That sounds like more fodder.
I think we should.
We can ask her some things. We'll start our own brand. Okay, we don't have to rip off Reddit. Ask me
a few things.
A few things. Things in the realm of human decency.
Yeah.
All right, I'm here for the pugilism. So
all right,
nice to see you.
We'll bring you back.
Okay.
See you later, Lisa.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Guys, so should we start our introduction?
Let's start. Yeah, you're going to introduce Scott.
Oh yeah, I'm going to introduce Scott. Okay, hold on. I have to get into the zen of the voice. Hold on, and I've got to dangle my mic like I'm an actual referee grabbing the mic and speaking into it. So let's see. In the red corner, weighing in at 28,300 followers, 4 esoteric book publications, and an SSRN feed longer than most faculty meetings. His students call him just okay. The internet calls him sometimes funny, but we just call him Scott, the ball peen hammer Shapiro. There you go.
Crowd goes wild.
I was a martial artist and sparred a lot. So if you want to see some action later, I'm more, like I said, I will do anything for a joke. So
in the blue corner, weighing in at 77,200 Twitter followers, it's the Delaware Destroyer. He listens to jazz and collects vintage cars. But don't let it fool you. He's an animal in the ring. He's had 25 fights, and every single one of them ended in a Supreme Court footnote. It's Orin. He went into Fourth Amendment law because he is the stalker. Kerr! There you go.
You're welcome, guys. You're never gonna forget that as hard as you try.
All right, so the first round of the debate is, what are you guys debating? Go.
What the hell, Orin? Means carpenter.
Yeah, what the hell?
Yeah, what really?
Do you guys disagree about Carpenter?
No, I didn't even really know what that case is, but I just know that Orin writes about it, and so I just was trying to start something. I mean, what's the deal? How
about let's think of an actual topic. So, what do you think about the role of jurisprudence in a law school curriculum?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, that is okay. Right. Do we really want to talk about that? I'm
Yes.
really happy to talk about
We
that.
have a whole thing planned. Like round 1 is debate what to debate. Round 2 is something ridiculous we picked. Round 3 is whatever you guys pick to debate.
You guys have to argue about what you're going to debate in round
And then
3.
Q&A. We'll pick the rest of the debate topics.
Yeah, so guys, it's in the audience, we've got, you can pose your questions now, and after round 3, we will bring you in to pose your questions.
Yeah. So I would just say that, so in the UK and in many Commonwealth countries, jurisprudence is a required course. And everyone has to take it, and everyone hates it. And the last thing, and in the United States, it's an optional course. Very, very few people take it. And I think that's the way it should be. I would hate for it to be a required course. and for people to have to sit there listening to things that they're not interested in. There are just so many other really important topics that are not required, and I don't see why jurisprudence should be one of them.
Is the course in the UK basically the same content as the course in the US?
It depends on who teaches it. Sometimes it is if the person does jurisprudence seriously, if they're a researcher. Otherwise, it's just like out of a, one of these, collection, like a case book for jurisprudence. People, the one thing is really good is that it's really good for the job market for people who study jurisprudence, because if you're a PhD student, you're going to get, you're likely to get a job because it's a required course. Whereas in the United States, I remember Jules Coleman used to tell me that nobody in the history of American law schools has ever gotten a job just doing jurisprudence. You have to do something else. And
this is going to be embarrassing. I don't really know how I would define it.
Yeah, what is a
class? Yeah, okay, hold on, wait. We should save this for round 3. But round 1 goes to Orin for correctly identifying the topic. So Orin wins. Orin/Scott Shapiro wins round 1.
The Scott Shapiro
not accept the win and give it to Scott, because I thought that was a very thoughtful answer.
I love the superphone hanging over your head.
That doesn't sound like pugilism, Orin.
Yeah,
way too gracious.
Yeah, right. I mean, what the hell?
Round 2. Hey, what's round 2?
Round 2 is mayonnaise.
Yeah, go.
Oh, Orin?
I'm against it. I think I just weird and unnecessary.
What if it's hipster aioli mayonnaise?
All the more reason to be against it.
Oh my God, Scott.
Scott,
how do you feel about mayonnaise?
Well, I just think like everything in context. Like tuna fish, you're gonna have like a tuna fish sandwich without mayonnaise? What the heck? I mean, I don't know. I mean, seriously, that's crazy.
Yes, it is crazy.
Orin, tuna fish. Are you for it or against it?
I'm in favor, just without mayonnaise.
So, like, what
do you do?
What
do you do to
what do you do with it?
I will actually just eat tuna straight out of the can. Actually, that's my
what.
I'm a purist when it comes to tuna fish, and
a purist when it comes to mayonnaise. Apparently,
no. I'm baffled. You do what to the what? You just eat tuna fish?
Well, I'm trying to take a strong position to make it like an interesting discussion about mayonnaise. So it's a little bit trying to, sort of be pugilistic in the spirit of the day. Apparently, the conceding the first round didn't go over very well. So, sorry, what was the?
Okay.
Actual position.
My actual position on mayonnaise is that I don't use very much of it. I think it's.
But you do use it.
I use a little bit.
Well, that's not purist at all.
Yeah,
right.
That's like I don't know this like really. I'm pretty sure that's like the reform of like like conservative and like aren't you like there's like all of these different maybe conservative, maybe it's the conservative. I don't know. Is that right? Like people.
I'm inclusive in my mayonism, so it's all okay.
All right.
Potato salad?
Hold on,
okay, but I just
Scott,
wait. Potato salad?
We gotta follow this out with hypotheticals.
Okay. So this is the test, the mayonnaise test. When I was a kid, I used to love stale white bread with mayonnaise in between it. That was it. That was the entire sandwich. That was all I would eat.
When you say a kid,
it was 3 months ago.
6 or like
No, I mean like when I was like a little, like when I was like in 2nd or 3rd grade, I went through this phase, and this was like my favorite food was like stale white bread with mayonnaise in between it. I would leave it out when I left for school, the bread out on the counter when I left for school and come back, and it would be stale on the counter. And then I make my sandwich.
Childhood you must have had.
Yeah.
She was aging her bread at age 7.
Orin, can we agree that Kate? Can we agree that Kate lost that round, even though she wasn't
Yes.
part of it?
Yes. Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
Fair. Okay, so people are anti-mayonnaise in that situation entirely. Everyone can agree.
Yeah.
All right. Round 3. Jurisprudence. Go.
Yeah, I'm actually fascinated.
A tough round.
I feel like this is Chicago versus Brown University. In terms of like.
Wait, first, before we do this round, we need an explanation. What is a jurisprudence class as opposed to
Yes.
any other class that involves jurisprudence?
Oh, well, so I mean, the way I mean it is like what sometimes you would call legal philosophy. So the concept of law, Dworkin, is there an obligation to obey the law? You know, things like that, as opposed to kind of when sometimes people talk about like the jurisprudence of the Fourth Amendment, meaning kind of like high level principles.
Except the people meaning Orin.
Right. Exactly.
No, for the record, I'm strongly against the use of the word jurisprudence to mean the case law of, which is unfortunately how
There's our round 3.
pompous way.
Should jurisprudence be used to refer to case law?
Definitely not. I agree
All right,
with that. I
agree
think
with
that's
Orin.
I think that's, and it's not as bad as Kate with the stale bread and the mayonnaise, but it's really bad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
what is wait, I don't understand. Why is it so bad? Like, what is
Now,
it? So what is it
Kate's
referring to? Like, if you're not talking about case law, are you talking about just like pure legal theory?
Do you want
Like
to
what?
go?
Okay,
Orin?
actually, give
Wait,
me a
but
for
referring to,
instance. What would you teach in a jurisprudence class, for example? That might be a better way to do it.
So, first of all, I love the word jurisprudence in general because it's so retro. It just stinks of it just dusty and old and sets expectations unbelievably low, of which I can exceed it. So I'm a big fan of that. But the jurisprudence of the Fourth Amendment just sounds like puffery. That sounds like you're saying something and
It's
when
like attaching Esquire to your name.
Yes.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it's like. Whereas when I do it for legal philosophy, it's not puffery. It makes it just sound insanely boring.
Does that account for your in the sense in which this is turning into both of you against Kate? Is that account for your position too? Other shot Scott Shapiro, Esquire.
Wait,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with Scott on this question.
Wait, what is the question? Like, wait, that basically like it's kind of just like puffery. It's kind of like, what does Esquire mean? It doesn't mean anything. Like, just call yourself a lawyer. Like, what's the difference between a lawyer and an attorney?
You know, when I was a young reporter at Legal Times, which was then owned by Steve Brill, there was a rule, and we would get memos about it, that we were not allowed to use the word Esquire behind someone's name because they did. And we would get, like, Brill would send these memos, and like Esquire is a word that should never be attached to one's own name. And anyone who, like Orin did with Scott Shapiro's name right now, writes Esquire after his own name is a fraud and a charlatan. And it is only a word that should be attached to other people's name than the speaker, if then. And so if somebody refers to himself as, Scott Shapiro Esquire, that is a red flag at this publication that this person is not to be, quoted as such.
I agree. It's sort of like, Ben, it's the equivalent on Twitter profiles when people on Twitter call themselves constitutional lawyers.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Right, because isn't, like, at the end of the day,
aren't we all?
Like, what does constitutional lawyer mean? Is it as opposed to an unconstitutional lawyer?
Like, lawyer who does constitutional law, like, there's a there's a statutory issue on a civil procedure case, and then suddenly there's like a
You're like, no, I'm not getting into that.
when they jump into the case because there's a constitutional issue, and then they're like, whoa, the rest is statutory, I'm out. Yeah, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ann Coulter used to go when she would go on shows. Her tagline would be constitutional lawyer, and so that also poisoned it for me as well.
Yeah.
Is she a lawyer?
There's all sorts of
She is. She
Yeah, she went to University of Michigan.
Yeah,
How did I miss that? I didn't know that.
I forget which circuit she clerked on too. She used to be a serious person.
Yeah.
Wait, I actually think I do know that because didn't she clerk for like Kaczynski or something or someone?
I don't think it was Kaczynski. I want to say it was like on the Third Circuit or something.
Maybe. Yeah.
So we got a bunch of questions teed up. We'll see if we can get anyone to get you guys to disagree about something substantial.
Yeah, stop being so polite, guys.
All right. Our first question is from Uzair Kadir. Let me bring. Wait, there he is. The floor is yours, but you got to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hey.
Oh, hey. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, as somebody who's interested in this subject matter, but is a little worried about like the future of this profession, most professions in general, the economy, is it worth going to law school? Like, what advice would you give to somebody who's considering that?
Hey, yeah, guys, tell us what you do about the thing that would underscores your livelihood. Like that's how I feel right now.
Before you do, I am reliably informed by means of text message that she clerked for Pasco Bowman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Circuit.
That makes sense.
So that is the answer. We have really good producers here on In Lieu of Fun.
Yeah, isn't it funny, amazing?
Well, what's the answer? Should people go to law school, or is this the time to run for the hills and get into artisanal mayonnaise production?
I'm so curious Orin, what do you think?
Oh, nice punt.
Thank you. Thank you. I
think it's hard to tell.
I think I won that round, by the way.
You did. You did. I think it's hard to tell. We don't know what things are going to be like 6 months out, or a year out, or 5 years out. And then the difficulty of the question is when you're thinking of applying to law schools, it's a decision that you're making now to study for the LSAT at some future time, or assuming there is an LSAT to take, and apply to law school in a future year, and then you actually come out of it and are ready for employment, 2.5 years later. And so it's hard to predict. My guess is that the way this sort of plays out is that we're in the public health crisis time of this, and it's just not where lawyers are playing a major role, but that in 2 years from now, hopefully the public health crisis part will be over. And that's usually when the lawyers come in with the legal implications of what just happened. And so, I think I think always whenever you decide to go to law school, it's always something you need to think about. Do you want to be a lawyer? What do you want to do? Is it worth it? And all that kind of stuff. So that's for everyone always a hard question. But I think it's possible that now is a good time. It's just too hard to tell because it's so early.
What do you think, Scott?
I mean, unfortunately, I agree. I would just say, I know. I mean, first of all, you brought the world's most reasonable man, and I let him go first.
Like he's engaged.
Stop being so nice. You're ruining it.
He's engaged in an ongoing campaign of identity theft in violation of the FAA. I'm directed at you, and you're praising him.
I would say I do worry about. I mean, I would just say, like, is anyone going to get a job at all in the next year and a half, 2 years? I mean, it's a calamity of unimaginable proportion. So I think like the opportunity costs are incredibly low about not being in the job market and going to school. So there's that sense of like, you know, either that or, you know, buy, you know, have somebody pay you to store oil in your house. Because it's like
Actually,
negative.
I've been thinking about that. I've been saving all of my sealable containers.
Here's the question I've been thinking about that. At what point, we're clearly past it, is the majority of the value of a barrel of oil the value of the barrel?
Yeah.
Right? We're clearly past it because the oil is of negative value and the barrel is of some value. But, you know, if you're paying negative $37 for a barrel of oil, how much of that, the oil must be worth like negative $39 because there's some, or $10 of which is like, a barrel is not
I don't think that
thing.
I don't think when you buy it they give you a barrel. I think it's a barrel. I think it's a barrel's worth of
volume,
oil. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't actually
I'm
buy.
gonna
They
buy a
don't
barrel
actually.
of oil. I want my barrel. It seems like
Sorry.
You buy the oil for the barrel. That's so depressing.
And there's like
a
a
restaurant,
a
can I have a cup of milk? You keep the cup.
You're right. Yeah.
This is my cup.
And there's like a 10-cent deposit also on the barrel. So
I
you
just
got
want
to
to
give
point
it
out
back.
that Orin has updated his Scott Shapiro Zoom name to Scott Shapiro Esquire.
All right, Allison. Allison has a really important question, guys, and I hope it's one you'll find a way to disagree about. But Allison, like our previous questioner, you do have to unmute yourself. All right, I'll unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm sorry about that. This might be the most important so far, so I would like this one seriously thought out, if you wouldn't mind spending a couple minutes on it. Are tacos sandwiches?
It's the question that is gripping America at this point. Do tacos count as sandwiches? Orin, go.
No.
What if they have mayonnaise?
Definitely no.
Scott,
Are
tacos.
mayonnaise sandwiches a sandwich?
Tacos.
I do
Sandwiches?
not. Yeah, tacos are not sandwiches. The question, may I just follow up by, in the neighborhood is the question is whether a burrito is a wrap.
Isn't the burrito sort of like the platonic wrap?
Yeah, so.
I mean, like all wraps are basically imitations, like when they die, they become
But is a
burritos.
hamburger a sandwich? Is a hot dog a sandwich? What is the definition of a sandwich?
It's gotta be like meat between, or food between two pieces of bread, right?
That is totally losing
the
its
question
mind.
that stumps you.
I swear to God.
How many
you're
degrees
joking
do
and
you have,
everything.
Scott?
No, but I was just going to say that you're like thinking, oh, this is a really stupid question. But we philosophers debate this all the goddamn time. I mean, is the Pope a bachelor? I've been at conference.
Yes, obviously.
Can I ask a question, Scott, about this? So isn't it all just depending on what version of the term you think is the right one, and the terms could have different meanings depending on the context? And so you're telling me the context, how broad it is, and then that's where your answer is to some degree of certainty. How can you spend that much time focused on those questions?
Now that's the kind of challenging gut punch.
That was my hope.
Justify your entire career right now. Go.
Well, I don't know. So like people used to worry about what's water. Is water so wet, colorless, odorless liquid that's in the lakes, and it turned out that philosophers in the 20th century, around in the 1970s, with the publication Naming Necessity, Saul Kripke's work, I started thinking, wait a second, actually, no, water isn't a contextual term, it's H2O. It's a natural kind, which is determined by chemistry and physics, because what we want to say is we want to say, like, the Greeks drank water just like we drink water, even though they had weird beliefs about water that were different than ours. So there's this temptation to try to say, well, it always depends on the context. But then you start saying, really, does it always depend on the context? When the ancients had views about when they had texts and they were using words that refer to what we would use the word water to, aren't we referring to the same thing, even though we had very different beliefs and even though they were saying in a very different context than we were? But I mean, people will, of course, debate.
Argument for it not being the same thing. I mean, the ancient Greeks believed all kinds of things about water that were wrong, and that, you know, we can forgive them for believing because they didn't have, you know, chemistry or you know, all kinds of, you know, modern physics that we have that enable us to know with a little bit more precision what water is. They had some ideas about water that were correct. But what's the argument that when they say water, it's not H2O because of context?
Well, but this is the great thing about what the revolution that Saul Kripke brought about in naming and necessity and Hillary Putnam in The Meaning of Meaning, is that before the 1970s and 1960s, everyone kind of was trying to figure out, like, what is the set of descriptions that attaches to the meaning of a term like water that defines water. And it now seems like a silly thing to us, but this was like a major advance in thinking about language. So, you know, I would just say about philosophy is that what I love about it is that you think to yourself, like, what could they possibly be arguing about? Isn't the answer obviously this? And then somebody comes along and says, no, actually it's backwards, it's the other way around. And you're like, how did anybody ever think that other thing? And you know, philosophy has very few moments like that, but when they happen, it's magical.
I actually love that.
Randy Barnett writes in with a trenchant, important observation, which is, compared with his background, Scott looks like a ghost or maybe a cartoon character. He emphasizes that that's a comment, not a question, but it does raise the question, Scott, of whether maybe your webcam should be dusted off.
So
unless you actually prefer, I kind of like it. Actually,
I actually do like it.
It's like your background is in sharp.
It also kind of, in terms of the meaning of meaning, I think that it means that you're not actually you, and I kind of like the lack of realism, frankly.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, so there's a way in which right, I'm a kind of spectral presence. And so you should listen to me more, because I'm not really I'm a disembodied mind. I like that.
I I also like the dragging qualities around, so you're sort of moving in an aura. Whereas Orin is what is that like?
Yeah, where are you? He's in a jazz club because he likes jazz.
The Village Vanguard, my favorite place in the world.
I get points for that.
You do.
I nailed it.
I live right by there. I live right by Village Vanguard.
I'm going to say something controversial because it's Pugilism week. Jazz is bullshit. Don't come at me. Don't come at me.
You know, like some positions are beneath contempt. Or like actively, you can't argue with them because they're wrong.
No one likes me and my jazz positions on jazz or my mayonnaise sandwiches, which is the only thing that we've all been able to agree on is that I lose.
So Randy Barnett has now posted a few other things that I just want to read you. He says of Scott's his image, I like it too. He is a spectral premise and like the hair appearing and disappearing. And then he says, I just got in here. I need to figure out what's being discussed. So Randy, you work on that. And we're gonna
then let us know.
Yeah. So the next question here.
Well, Randy, we were talking about the merits of teaching jurisprudence to American law students.
Slander all of jazz. So our next question is from anonymous attendee, and we don't let anonymous attendees talk themselves because sometimes they turn out to be swastika guy. But this one seems pretty civilized, so I'm going to read his comment. He says, Canadian here, but boggled that one can graduate without an intro to philosophy of law course. So this goes back to Scott's point that in the Commonwealth, philosophy of law or jurisprudence is required and hated, and here it's not required and much beloved.
Well, I wouldn't say it was beloved. I would say that the 20 students a year that take it are fond of it. I would just say my wife is
beloved. It's just a beloved with a small denominator.
Right. I mean, my wife's Canadian, and I love all things Canadian. I'm a huge Canadianophile, and anonymous, I know I would like you.
Okay, so anonymous attendee also.
You know, we're not voting on who wins the rounds, right, Scott?
We are. So anonymous attendee also, and maybe it's a different anonymous, maybe this one, swastika guy, actually. What do the professors think of the Merriam-Webster definition of jurisprude? Jurisprude, quote, an individual who makes ostentatious show of learning in jurisprudence and the philosophy of law, or who regards legal doctrine with undue solemnity or veneration. Orin, what do we think of the term jurisprude?
Can I just say, why does Merriam-Webster have that definition and not boomer? Like, that's ridiculous. Sorry, but go ahead, Orin.
Yeah, I've actually never heard the word jurisprude used in a non-ironic way, although that roughly captures the ironic definition. So I don't know if that's actually the dictionary or a joke, but I think it captures what we were saying before about the way in which the term is, I think Scott agrees, misused outside of the legal philosophy context just to dress up law.
Yeah, it's as Bentham said about rights, nonsense on stilts.
Oh my God, I've never heard that, and I really like that. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's one of the great. It's one of the great Burns. so Bentham, a utilitarian, was trying to skewer, was trying to troll the natural law people. So the natural rights people called rights nonsense on stilts, which is so awesome.
I just thought of a different round that I want to get to Barnett's question, but I want to just frame this. I want to hear hedgehog versus fox. And that is maybe our final round. That is what I would like to maybe end with. Yes. Anyways, we'll talk about that in a second. But Barnett, we have a question.
Yes. What is one class you feel all law students should take before they graduate?
Not jurisprudence, apparently.
No. You mean non-required, not part of the first year curriculum?
Yeah, let's assume it's not part of first year curriculum.
What do you guys think?
Other than Kate's internet law class.
Of course. So I'll go. So I actually think there is no one class that every law student should take other than the required ones, in part because legal training is really sort of a way of thinking more than substantive background that every lawyer needs to know. The stuff that every lawyer needs to know is not even every lawyer, it's sort of most lawyers, and that's really the first year curriculum. I think most people would say, you know, the classes that are maybe the most illuminating about the world that students may not already get are classes like business associations, aka corporations, which I think just suddenly exposes students to like a whole world of thinking that is really important in the law, but they may not know. Con law, where it's not required, is of course another one. But so much of law school I think of as taking professors more than courses. And so, you know, you learn how a professor thinks about an area of law as much as you learn the field of law. So my recommendation I usually give to students is to just take a varied set of professors and a varied set of courses as you can, dabble in everything. And I know I sometimes see when I look at, you know, who's taking classes in areas related to my own classes, and I'll see students that are taking my class, a related class, a third related class, or sort of 3 courses roughly in the same area. And I always think that's a huge mistake because they're getting overlap and they're not learning new things, and they're not. It's just great to experience a little bit of everything. So I guess in the end, I say there's sort of no one class outside of the required ones that everyone should take. But I think of business associations as probably the one that is the, if I had to recommend one, that'd probably be it.
What do you say, Scott?
That's stupid. No, I mean, that's of course right. I mean, I would say corporations, but so just 2 quick things. One is that the course that probably affects people the most is rarely taken, which is family law, because you know, not 50%, because you know, graduate students have a lower divorce rate, but 40% maybe, but it's almost 100% chance that a student will either get divorced or have a sibling that's divorced or an incredibly close friend who's going through a divorce. And it's really enormously important to understand, especially, so I did some practicing of family law, and I found that things were won and lost like in the first week. Like somebody would get served with papers and then they would freak out, and they would kind of give in immediately, and then that would lead to mistakes. So family law would be my dark horse. But I agree with Orin that you know, corporations is so important that and not a required course that I would think that you'd have to take that.
Can I just, I'm going to make a pitch to redeem myself after mayonnaise sandwiches and jazz, which is basically that I'm going to say.
You're really falling behind.
I know. No one likes me anymore. I'm okay. Your hate fuels me. But there is I would like to say that, like, I actually think that, like, American legal education, good American legal education, teaches jurisprudence alongside every single course, and it's in every course. And if, like, as a person who then went on to get their PhD in law as if they had been abroad and took jurisprudence classes, I had this, oh my freaking God moment when I finally took, like, the class at Yale that was just, like, all about jurisprudence. Like, this is what I was learning the whole time: the indeterminacy of it all, the humanness of it all, the philosophy of it all, the big theory. And, like, frankly, that, like, I just think there's different learning styles. I think that some people walked away from law school having all of that and having imbibed it from the philosophies that my professors had taught, knowing that that was what it was all about. And some people walked away thinking that everything was rules and applying rules and, like, everything else. And having a like, teaching it top down doesn't mean that people get it more than not. And, like, the order of which you teach it just really is about the way that you learn it. Sometimes you're never going to learn it. It's just about kind of like, it's a philosophy of thinking about the world more than it is about the law in particular. And that's just kind of what I was going to wrap up on.
All right, Randy Barnett.
Yeah, I know. And now zooming in from Washington D.C. maybe one of the former professors that I had at Georgetown Law School.
Georgetown Law professor, occasional restaurant bumper into of Benjamin Wittes, Volok conspiracy blogger, and general interesting libertarian polymathic mind, Randy Barnett. The floor is yours.
Well, what a great introduction that was, Ben. Thank you.
I think the last time I ran into you in a restaurant was in back before, it was a while ago. It was before Krupin's closed.
I do not recall that.
There you go. See, it's like
I think the last time I bumped into you was
remember meeting Orin, you know.
I was like gonna say that you've never bumped into me, but I was I'd never took one of your classes, but the last time I saw you, you were having lunch with one of my very favorite professors, Peter Byrne, who is just a tremendous human being.
Well, if I had my video camera on, you would see me smiling from ear to ear, based on both that introduction and that recollection. I'm actually ensconced safely in Central Virginia with my 91-year-old mother and 97-year-old father-in-law. We got them out of Maryland several weeks ago, and we are keeping them safe here with us until it's safe to go back to their place in Maryland. I only tuned in because I wanted to see if it was possible for both Scott and Orin to lose this debate.
It looks like Kate's losing.
Bam, bam. Yeah, if I hadn't thrown myself under the bus, someone may have lost.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Iran-Iraq war for me.
Different visions of authoritarianism.
Yeah,
right. You're Al Qaeda that comes out of it.
I want Scott to continue to be on screen because I love the way his hair just appears and it disappears. So he's like bald and he has what?
Into the arch.
The high-minded content we bring work to bring you.
So I had a question for Scott. Having to be serious here, I mean, I felt I was obligated to have a serious question. So when I taught jurisprudence, I used to use Joel Feinberg's text, The Philosophy of Law, partly because I had an article in there on restitution of victims of crime. So I always believe in self-adoption if possible. I'm just wondering, is that, I just checked Amazon, that book apparently is in the 9th edition. What does Scott think about that book? What book does he use?
Thank you. By the way, I was just going to say that Randy, I just so enjoy your feed and your sometimes we get into a little tussle, but it's a good fun. So I really appreciate that.
Now on Pugilism Week, Scott, we don't like praise our opponents. We don't. Sometimes we get into a tussle. And then when you're down, I kick you. We gotta keep up the spirit here.
Yeah, that's right. So I would say, I know the Feinberg book well because Jules Coleman, my teacher, edited it for a bunch of years. And there was a selection of mine there at one point. I do not use horn books. I never use selection books with mere selections in them. I feel like they often kind of ruin the integrity of the argument. And so I normally teach books. So the books that I use are Concept of Law by heart. I spend a lot of time on that. I do Law's Empire. I do Antonin Scalia's A Matter of Interpretation. I do Carl Schmitt's The Concept of the Political.
Everyone's been talking about that guy
Carl
lately.
Schmitt into this conversation.
Oh my God. Carl Schmitt is like, I swear to God, like everyone is talking, like I was just on a call with Jack Balkin and Jack Balkin was quoting like Carl Schmitt. I'm like, Jesus, Jack, who are you? What's going on?
Because the thing about Schmitt is that he's extremely smart. He really is. He's not just yes, he's a Nazi. Yes, he was a Nazi. That's true. And no way of getting around it. And he was also probably mentally ill to some extent. And he was an anti-Semite, though. He was a really close friend. His really close friend with his really close friend was Jewish. And I mean, there's so many contradictions in the guy, but he was really brilliant. And what thing is so interesting about Schmidt is that because he's a critic of liberalism, he had the people on the right like him and the people on the left like him. And they are attack because they see him attacking liberalism. They think that, one or the other, liberalism is wrong. And so therefore the right thinks the right is right and the left thinks the left is right. I think it's incredibly important to take on the toughest critics of liberalism and see if they can, what are they trying to say? And is there an answer? I think it's
if
really
Carl
important.
Schmitt were alive, would you have a beer with him? And if so,
What is he, like George W. Bush? Like, what is going on here?
Would you feel awkward about it?
Well, definitely I feel awkward about having beer with a Nazi. That's like, I'll come right out and say it. That's a red line for me. I know cancel culture, we're not supposed to wokeness and everything, but Nazis but this is the thing that Owen and I write about in The Internationalist is that Hans Kelsen was the dean of Cologne Law School and was, advocated and hired Schmidt. And Schmidt, this was 1932, and then 1933, when Hitler rose to power, Schmidt got Kelsen fired. So that there's this thing that I always worry about liberals, and which was that Schmidt always said was that liberals can't tell the difference between friend and enemy, and Kelsen couldn't. So there may be you'd have a beer with them. Maybe you wouldn't want to hire them for your faculty. It's a tough question. Although even in academia, our whole profession is based on engagement, and so what do you do with a Schmittian? You probably have to hire them if they're really brilliant.
Orin, would you have a beer with Carl Schmitt, and how awkward would you feel about it?
So all I know about Carl Schmitt is that he's this Nazi German philosopher guy who believed in absolute power, and that is not high on my list of people to have a beer with. So no.
So
I would totally have a beer with Carl Schmitt, and I wouldn't feel awkward about it. But that's the journalist in me,
right?
Right. Like
I would kind of like, if you're actually kind of going back in history and like it's going to be like a one-off, like have a beer with someone, I would have a beer with Adolf Hitler. Like it would be like fascinating. Like, don't you think that would be fascinating? Like to ask him questions and like to talk about things. Like there's so much that's unknown. Like that's also, well,
I want to be
maybe I shouldn't say that so openly, but
I'd interview. I mean, the question is, would you interview Hitler?
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, would you interview them? Like it would be amazing to interview them.
The reason I was saying have a beer with is it implies a certain like.
It implies like
as colleagues.
Yes.
Right?
No. Yes.
I would go interview almost anybody.
Right.
But that's in a very discreet professional capacity. I mean, we're sitting around here shooting the shit, having kind of in lieu of fun conversation. Would you do that with Carl Schmitt? And I thought when Adrian Vermeule and Eric Posner wrote their Executive Unbound book, and they kind of self-consciously said, the hero of this book is not James Madison, it's Carl Schmitt. They were saying basically, we should, they were partly being mischievous, but I think they were also saying we should rehabilitate Schmidt to the sort of person that you can kind of sit around and have a beer with, not just somebody that you slink off and secretly read because there's some insight in his heretic illiberalism.
Yeah, go
I didn't read. Partly, there's a style of scholarship that my colleague Doug Kaiser calls a bad boy scholarship, and there's a kind of designed to kind of troll people. And I think that there's like a little bit of an element there, but I didn't read them as trying to normalize his personality or his personal views. I think they thought of him as somebody who had kind of exposed hypocrisy and the kind of silliness of a certain type of legal liberalism, and we should just be kind of clear-eyed about what the administrative state had become.
But
I mean, it is really interesting.
I think like that's a reasonable description of where Eric was. But now with Adrian having kind of self-consciously embraced a much more authoritarian vision of what he wants to use the administrative state for, I wonder if Adrian had a somewhat different project.
Do you think we could get Adrian to fight Noah Feldman on the show? That would be a good match.
Oh, I would watch that.
Adrian has left Twitter. I think because like
that does
He's
not
back,
mean
he's back.
that does not mean anything.
I will totally invite him on.
That's not like life. Like he can still come on and debate us. That would be fun. Maybe that's like we talked about Marty Lederman being the one. I love Marty, but like we should maybe there should be
who is like the person who you would most like to see debate Adrian Vermeule?
And then in the same thing, who would you most like to see debate Noah Feldman?
I think that they're a great pair. I think that's like an epic.
Wouldn't that be epic? I kind of think that would be like a little bit. That would be like a little bit like.
In lieu of fun, we have an epic smackdown.
Yeah, I think it would actually be quite substantive, and I think it would be really interesting.
Well, we couldn't maybe we couldn't ask them about tacos, but I would actually like to ask them about tacos.
What I think is interesting about it, and I'll agree with Scott yet again. What's interesting about it is
you guys are the worst at this.
Terrible. So what's interesting, I find, Adrian's work has a lot of people wondering, like, is he being serious? Is he trolling? What are his goals? And some people who've read a lot of his work have a strong sense of that, but those, including myself, who are not familiar, I've read some of his articles, mostly his earlier work rather than his later work. I think it'd be really interesting just because you could really sort of get to the question of like, what are the goals of this? Is this like, you could press him in a way that maybe becomes harder outside of that setting. We just sort of read his work. I think it'd be really illuminating either way.
I would happily invite Adrian on.
William F. Buckley. What is the William F. Buckley debate? I have watched many times the William F. Buckley debate and the Baldwin debate. Those are amazing. But there is another Buckley debate it's escaping my mind. I'm just like completely going blank. He debated someone else.
Well, he debated a whole bunch of people.
I mean, he's debated a bunch of people, but there was
line, which was like him arguing with lots of people.
Yeah, but there was another really famous one. It's not.
Well, the other really famous one is Gore Vidal.
Yes, Vidal. Sorry, that's who it was. Sorry, that's who I was thinking of. So it just seems like a really great kind of like that would be amazing. It'd be fun.
Yeah. All right. Can I just ask Orin one thing, which I'm dying to ask him?
All right, we got to wrap up. But this is like, I hope this is going to be the gut punch that ends the fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really want to know, like, being a never Trumper, okay, and being somebody who's FedSoc guy, conservative guy. Are there people who you won't have beers with now?
That's
that
a great
you
question.
Really
did
likes beer.
before?
Other than Carl Schmidt.
No. I
Yeah.
mean, from like, because they've been, they've stood for things in this period that you find just too dark.
Sure. I mean, there are some people who I think are really, who I'm just incredibly disappointed in, and I think if I were to have a beer with them, I would not be good company. And so yeah, there are certainly some people like that, but there are a lot of people who I think, an interesting aspect of the sort of never Trump FedSoc angle is when we announced checks and balances just before the Federal Society annual convention. I got a lot of feedback from a lot of people there, and there was so much positive feedback from people who are like, "Thank you so much for doing this. This is so important." And a lot of people who, for career reasons or other reasons, didn't want to speak out, but at least when talking to me, were really sympathetic to what we were doing. So maybe I'm an optimist, and I think there's always redeeming qualities in most people, but I would say there are definitely some people who I would not have a beer with, but others who I think they can come around, and I would have a drink with them.
We're going to end it there. I am reliably informed by our producers that Scott Shapiro has added Esquire to his Twitter bio, which I think is a bold move in light of this conversation.
I think that means Scott wins. I don't know who wins.
I don't know.
Everyone wins. Everyone wins.
Everyone wins on In Lieu of Fun.
Right.
Thank you, Scott and Scott Esquire. I think tomorrow we're going to have Lisa Page here for an Ask Me Anything Decent. Lisa, you can raise your hand if that's really happening, or not raise your hand if it's not. Otherwise, that can be like Lisa against the world sort of pugilism. But otherwise, we will gather together the next pairing of brutal, savage pugilism. Scott, thank you, and Orin, aka Scott, thank you.
And I would just like want to say, I encourage everyone to go and relax by listening to anything but jazz, and then also
have the mayo
eating their mayonnaise sandwiches for dinner, and and be grateful for them.
Such bad opinions. It's terrible. Kate, you really are not allowed to have fun anymore. In lieu of fun, we will be back tomorrow. And thanks for joining.
Bye, guys.
Thank
it
you.
was so
Thank
fun.
you.
Thank you for
Orin.
coming. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.